Hey there, friends. Some stories show us just how powerful kindness can be. This one starts on a foggy highway. A wounded wild bobcat, a girl with an open heart, and a rescue that changed a whole community. If you've ever wondered whether trust and gentleness can heal more than just broken bones, you'll want to hear Oliver's story. Let me know how this touched you. Drop a comment, like, or follow for more, and let's step into the wild together. Sometimes, fate changes in the span of a single heartbeat, a truth proven one quiet night on a forgotten highway, snaking through Minnesota's ancient pine forests. It was the kind of night where fog gathers between the trunks, and headlights pierce the darkness like lone searchlights searching for meaning. Only the low hum of an engine broke the silence, mingling with the chorus of crickets and the distant call of an owl. No one saw the young bobcat slip from the tree line. Maybe he was chasing the memory of his mother, who had vanished weeks ago. Or perhaps he was drawn by the ghostly smell of a discarded burger wrapper that fluttered near the road, a temptation in the hunger that gnawed at his ribs. His coat, a blend of russet and shadow, made him nearly invisible under the moon's faint glow. The car, a late-model sedan driven by a drowsy trucker desperate to make it home, rounded the bend with radio static filling the cab. The bobcat froze, his wild heart thundering, eyes wide and golden. The brakes screeched. The world collapsed into a single, shattering moment. A thud, a flash of pain, and the terrible silence that follows an accident no one intended. The car didn't stop. The driver, shaken and pale, glanced in the rearview mirror, unable to process what had happened, then pressed harder on the gas, eager to escape the guilt. The bobcat, stunned, lay sprawled at the road's edge, his hind leg twisted at an impossible angle. Blood seeped into his fur. He tried to stand, teeth bared against agony, and managed only a desperate crawl into the dew-soaked brush. The forest swallowed him again, hiding his pain, his fear, his fading hope. Hours passed. Fog rolled in, and with it came the chill that seeps into wounded bones. The bobcat's breathing grew ragged. A coyote yipped in the distance, making the little cat flinch and press himself tighter to the earth. Instinct urged him to run, but every movement set his leg aflame. A single car passed, then another, their lights bright and indifferent. No one saw him. The wild is a hard place, even for those born to it. As the night deepened, the bobcat's mind drifted. He remembered the warmth of his mother's tongue on his head, the soft comfort of a sibling's fur. He remembered the taste of fresh rabbit, the cold thrill of the hunt. But now, pain and fear clouded everything. Somewhere close, a raccoon rustled in the trash, oblivious. The bobcat's world had shrunk to pain and darkness, broken only by the sound of approaching footsteps, two-legged, unhurried, almost soft. But it was not yet morning, not yet time for help to arrive. Instead, the night stretched on. An owl landed on a low branch, tilting its head at the scene below. A gentle breeze carried the smell of gasoline, pine needles, and old sadness. The bobcat's breathing grew slow and shallow. For a moment he wondered if this was how stories ended, in silence, under a sky full of indifferent stars. Yet, fate was not done. Far away, at the Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center, a phone rang. On the other end was a trucker's shaky voice, thick with guilt and regret. I think it was a cat. A big one, out on 17 by the old Ranger's sign. I didn't mean to. Please, if there's anything you can do. Even in his pain, the bobcat didn't know that someone now cared enough to try. That two women would soon be racing the dawn, hearts pounding, hope warring with fear. But for now, all he knew was that he was alone. Midnight faded into 3 a.m. A gentle drizzle began, cold drops splashing through the leaves and finding their way to the wounded animal below. His breath misted in the chill. The forest, his home, his sanctuary, felt foreign and hostile, every rustle a threat. He could sense predators moving, attracted by the scent of blood. He wanted to snarl, to fight, but every muscle ached. He was too tired. And yet, beneath the pain, something fierce still burned. A will to survive. He lay there half hidden, half exposed as the world kept turning. In the darkness, eyes closed, he waited. He did not know what the morning would bring. Rescue or more suffering, hope or the final end. He was a wild thing, alone but not broken. Not yet. As the first hints of gray crept through the trees, a pair of headlights cut through the mist, slower, more purposeful than before. The soft rumble of an engine, the low voices of humans speaking not in fear but in hope, drifted across the highway. The Bobcat tensed, too exhausted to run, but the spark in his golden eyes flickered stubbornly, waiting, just waiting, for whatever came next. Would help come in time? Would anyone care for a wounded wild heart? In the hush before dawn, the question hung in the air, unanswered and electric. And somewhere deep inside, a story was only just beginning. The early morning mist clung to the pines like old memories, and the Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center was just waking. In the pre-dawn stillness, the only sound was the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant whir of the coffee machine sputtering to life. Leah Peterson, 16 and already a fixture at the center, moved quietly through the halls, her auburn braid bouncing at her back. She was feeding the songbirds in the aviary when the phone rang, sharp and urgent. Leah's heart skipped. At this hour, it was rarely good news. She hurried to the main office, where Dr. Margaret Winters was already picking up the receiver. The veterinarian's face was usually composed, but as she listened, a crease formed between her brows. "Yes, thank you for calling. You did the right thing. We'll leave right away." Leah hovered at the door, worry lighting up her blue eyes. "What happened?" Dr. Winters, barely 30 but steady as bedrock, hung up and met Leah's gaze. "A trucker called in an accident. Said he might have hit a young bobcat out on Highway 17. He's not sure if it's still alive?" Leah's breath caught. Wild bobcats rarely survived collisions. "We have to go. Now." Minutes later, they were in the battered rescue van, Leah double-checking the tranquilizer kit and a soft fleece blanket, Dr. Winters gripping the steering wheel. The sky was a bruised violet, rain threatening again. As they sped down the winding road, Leah's mind raced, thinking about the animal out there, terrified and alone, every minute counting down like a slow fuse. They reached the site as the sun crept up, painting streaks of pink and gold across the sky. The area was eerily still, dew sparkling on the grass, the highway empty except for their van. Leah's boots sank into the soft shoulder as she searched for any sign. Paw prints, blood, a drag mark. Nothing. She moved slowly, eyes trained on the underbrush. "Over here," she called suddenly, spotting a patch of flattened grass and a single dark tuft of fur. Dr. Winters joined her, already pulling on latex gloves. They followed the faint trail, hearts pounding. Then, nestled in a tangle of ferns, they saw him, a young bobcat, barely more than a yearling, his side rising and falling rapidly. His eyes glowed gold, defiant and terrified, Blood darkened his haunch, and his back leg was twisted, ugly, and swollen. "Hey, buddy," Laya whispered, her voice trembling but gentle. "It's okay. We're here to help." The bobcat bared his teeth in a silent snarl, but didn't move. He was too weak to fight, but not too weak to fear. Dr. Winters prepared the tranquilizer, her movements deliberate and calm. "Just a little pinch, that's all," she murmured, as if speaking to a child. She aimed, pressed the plunger. The bobcat's body tensed, then slackened as the medicine took hold. Laya reached out, her hands shaking as she wrapped him in the fleece, careful not to jostle his leg. For a moment, Laya thought she saw something strange in his eyes, a flicker of understanding or gratitude before they drifted closed. She pulled him close, feeling his heartbeat thunder against her arm. The ride back was tense, the van's interior filled with the scent of pine needles and wild animal as Dr. Winters checked vitals and murmured updates. Pulse is rapid, breathing shallow, but he's hanging on. He wants to live. Laya stroked his head gently. "We should name him," she said softly. Dr. Winters glanced over, her mouth curving in a tired smile. "You always name them. Go ahead." "Oliver," Laya said after a moment, the name rising from somewhere deep and certain. "He looks like an Oliver." "Oliver it is," Dr. Winters said, pulling into the center's lot as the sun broke fully above the horizon. "Let's get him inside." Inside the center, the mood shifted from adrenaline to focus. The animal care team moved with well-rehearsed urgency, preparing the surgical suite, laying out clean towels, warming IV fluids. Laya didn't leave Oliver's side, helping to lift him onto the table. As Dr. Winters began her assessment, checking for fractures, feeling along Oliver's ribs, examining the twisted leg, Laya stood by his head, whispering soft encouragements. The bobcat, even sedated, let out a low, wary sound. But he didn't lash out. He didn't bare his teeth. Instead, he gazed at Laya with eyes both wild and impossibly calm. "Most bobcats would be fighting for their lives," Dr. Winters noted quietly, glancing at Laya. "But not him. He's watching, waiting." Laya nodded, unable to explain the connection she felt. She'd rescued plenty of animals before, raccoons, foxes, even an eagle with a broken wing. But there was something about Oliver, something old and knowing, buried beneath the pain. As the team prepped for surgery, Laya read softly from a worn paperback she kept in her backpack. Her voice filled the room with gentle rhythm, a fragile barrier against fear. Nurses worked around her, and even Dr. Winters paused to listen, her eyes softening. The hours crawled. Outside, the world spun on, school buses rumbled past, sparrows sang in the pines. But inside the center, everything narrowed to the small figure on the table and the desperate hope that he might make it. At last, as the surgery began, Laya settled into a chair beside the recovery cage, refusing to leave. She pressed her forehead to the cool metal and whispered, "Hang in there, Oliver. Please hang in there." For a long while, the only answer was the slow, steady beep of the heart monitor and the promise of morning breaking, hope and fear locked in a quiet war. What neither Laya nor Oliver knew was that this rescue, born of accident and compassion, would be the beginning of something extraordinary. But for now, all that mattered was survival, and the fragile thread of connection tying a wild heart to a human one. The surgical lights cast a pale glow over Oliver's battered body as Dr. Winters methodically scrubbed her hands. Her jaw was set, her focus unshakable. She'd done hundreds of surgeries before, but this one felt different. It wasn't just the gravity of the injuries, It was the way Oliver's eyes had followed Leia into the room, the soft, plaintive rumble in his chest that sounded almost like trust. Leia sat in a plastic chair pressed close to the recovery cage, refusing to leave. She could see everything, how Dr. Winters's brow furrowed as she examined the twisted limb, how the veterinary nurse, Marco, adjusted the oxygen mask to fit the Bobcat's wild, spotted face. The hush in the room was broken only by the hum of equipment and the soft, reassuring words the team whispered to Oliver, as though he could understand. The surgery was long and delicate. Dr. Winters worked with painstaking precision, setting the shattered femur with slender rods and plates, stitching torn muscle, and flushing gravel from wounds. Twice Oliver's heart rate dipped, and twice Marco reached for the IV bag, murmuring encouragement like a prayer. Leia pressed her palms together, knuckles white. In her lap, a battered paperback, The Wind in the Willows, lay open, but the words blurred. Instead, she closed her eyes and spoke softly, the stories rolling from her lips, threading their way through the antiseptic air. Once upon a time, there was a brave little cat who loved the wind, the wild, and the pine trees. He was stronger than he knew. He just needed someone to believe it. Minutes blurred into hours. The sun climbed high, pouring gold through the frosted windows. Outside, the center was waking up. Volunteers arrived to tend to the fox kits and orphaned owlets, their laughter and footsteps distant. Leia didn't notice. She kept reading, her voice growing raw but determined, every sentence a small offering to the fragile life fighting beside her. Inside the operating room, Dr. Winters worked in silence, sweat beading her brow. Every so often she'd glance through the glass at Leia and Oliver, drawing strength from the girls' presence. There were moments when doubt crept in, when the damage seemed too great, when Oliver's breathing shuddered, but she pushed it down. She wouldn't give up, not today. At last, as afternoon shadows stretched across the linoleum, Dr. Winters stepped back. The worst was over. She exchanged a look with Marco, half relief, half exhaustion, and nodded. "He made it through," she said quietly. "He's not out of the woods, but he's got a fighting chance." Leia's breath whooshed out of her, and her face broke into a trembling smile. "Can I see him?" "In a minute," Dr. Winters said, peeling off her gloves. "He'll be waking up soon. He'll need a friend." They moved Oliver gently into the recovery cage. His breathing was shallow but steady, his body wrapped in clean bandages. Leia crouched beside him, reading softly. She described the sunlight on the pines, the chipmunks darting through the grass, anything to remind him of the world outside pain. The first time Oliver's eyes flickered open, Leia held her breath. He looked straight at her, not through her, not past her, but at her. There was no wild panic, no lashing out, only exhaustion and a kind of wary trust that made Leia's heart ache. "Hey, Oliver," she whispered. "You're safe. We're right here." Dr. Winters watched from the doorway, shaking her head in disbelief. "Most wild bobcats would be fighting tooth and claw," she murmured to Marco. "He's different." Marco grinned. "Maybe he knows he owes us one." Over the next days, the struggle for life played out in slow motion. Oliver drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes shivering with fever, sometimes whimpering softly as the pain flared. Leia was always there, reading, singing, even just breathing in quiet rhythm with him. She learned every twitch of his ears, every rumble of his chest. She saw how he flinched at sudden sounds, how he tensed when hands drew near. But gradually, something changed. When Laya rested her palm against the cage, Oliver didn't shrink away. He pressed his nose to the bars, eyes unblinking, and let out a gentle, questioning sound. Dr. Winters started to take notice. During one late-night check, she found Laya reading while Oliver watched her, completely calm. The vet knelt by the cage, her voice gentle. "Hey there, tough guy," she said. "You've got quite the fan club." Oliver's tail gave a small thump, the barest acknowledgement. Laya grinned, hope blossoming in her chest. Still, the danger was far from over. Infection was a constant threat. Every morning, Dr. Winters checked the wounds, her expression tight. "His body's fighting," she told Laya, "but sometimes it's the spirit that tips the scales." One morning, Laya awoke from a doze and found Oliver watching her with patient, almost human eyes. He stretched, slow and deliberate, then rested his head on his paws. For the first time, he looked at peace. "He's healing," Laya whispered. "Not just his body, his heart, too." As the days turned into a week, Oliver began to eat more, purring softly when Laya spoke. He never growled or lashed out, not even when nurses changed his bandages or checked his wounds. Instead, he offered gentle blinks, quiet patience, a wild thing learning trust, one slow heartbeat at a time. The staff at Pine Ridge began to talk. "It's like he's thanking us," one nurse remarked. "Like he knows we're trying to help." Dr. Winters nodded, but her eyes were wary. "We have to remember, he's still wild. Never forget that." But Laya, watching Oliver curl contentedly in his cage, couldn't help but hope. Maybe this gentle bobcat wasn't just surviving. Maybe, just maybe, he was teaching them all something about what it means to heal. The weeks that followed brought a quiet transformation to the Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center. A rhythm that pulsed softly beneath the surface of daily chores and routine. Oliver's days no longer blurred into pain and fever. They unfolded gently, with a curious sense of hope blossoming at the edges. Laya became part of his every day. No matter how early she arrived, Oliver seemed to be waiting. If he heard her sneakers squeak on the tile, he would rise, favoring his bandaged leg, and shuffle toward the glass front of his recovery enclosure. Sometimes, he would press his nose to the glass and tap it with a velveted paw, just once, polite, as if asking for permission. "Morning, Oliver." Laya would greet him, voice warm and soft. She'd settle cross-legged on the floor outside his enclosure, pulling out the worn paperback she'd taken to carrying everywhere. Some days she read aloud. Other times, she simply talked, telling him about school, her little brother's endless pranks, or the way sunlight slanted through the pines after a storm. Oliver listened. He truly listened. His eyes, wise, gold-flecked, impossibly deep, followed Laya's every movement. When she paused mid-sentence, he would tilt his head, as if waiting for her to continue. On afternoons when thunder grumbled and rain lashed the windows, Laya would hum lullabies, and Oliver, astonishing everyone, would press his side against the glass in contentment, eyes half closed. The other volunteers began to notice the strange ritual. "That's not normal for a bobcat, is it?" asked Mateo, the senior caretaker, one rainy Tuesday, as Laya gently slid her palm along the glass and Oliver matched her with his paw. Dr. Winters, who watched all this with a mixture of pride and scientific curiosity, shook her head. "No. Most wild bobcats, even when injured, stay wary or aggressive. But Oliver's different. He doesn't just tolerate Laya. He seeks her out. As Oliver's body healed, so did his spirit. The angry red lines of his wounds faded to pale scars, His limp became less pronounced, and the light returned to his eyes. With every day, his movements grew surer, his muscles returning beneath the silken fur. But it wasn't just physical recovery that set him apart. He began to display a peculiar series of gestures, subtle but unmistakable. Whenever someone approached, Laia, Dr. Winters, or even a stranger, he would greet them with a quiet, almost musical trill, a sound more suited to a kitten than a wild adult. If someone lingered near the glass, Oliver would pause, look at them, and then gently tap the barrier as if inviting a connection. He never hissed, never raised a claw in threat. Instead, he seemed to offer trust with every gesture. One afternoon, Dr. Winters decided to observe Oliver more closely. She set a notebook on her lap and watched as Laia began her usual visit. This time, Laia brought a feather toy, just to see what Oliver would do. At first, he eyed it with suspicion, but after a few minutes, he stretched, limped closer, and, ever so carefully, batted at it with a gentle, measured swipe. Dr. Winters scribbled in her notebook, "Engages in play, no aggression. Responds to positive human presence. Initiates gentle contact. Extraordinary." Word of Oliver's unusual behavior started to spread. Volunteers would drop by the recovery room just to watch the ritual unfold. Oliver's tapping, Laia's patient storytelling, the easy trust between wild and human. One day, Mrs. Jensen, the elderly front desk manager, shuffled in with her cane. She'd always been wary of the wild animals, but curiosity got the better of her. "He really lets you get that close?" she asked Laia, peering through her thick glasses. "Come see for yourself," Laia encouraged, moving aside. Mrs. Jensen inched closer. Oliver watched her approach, blinking slowly. He didn't move away. Instead, he gently tapped the glass, once, twice, as if to say, "You're welcome here." Mrs. Jensen smiled, her whole face softening. "Would you look at that? He's got manners." After that, visitors came more often. Some brought gentle voices, some just quiet company. Oliver greeted each with the same measured politeness, never pushing, always inviting. Dr. Winters began to realize that what they were witnessing wasn't just remarkable, it was rare, maybe even unique. In the evenings, when the center quieted and most of the staff went home, Laia would linger, talking to Oliver about everything and nothing. Sometimes she found herself confiding secrets she hadn't told anyone else. Her fear of starting high school, the ache she felt when her parents argued, her wish that kindness could heal more than just broken bones. Oliver, for his part, seemed to understand. He would blink, slow and deliberate, and tap the glass with his paw as if giving permission for Laia to share whatever was on her mind. In those moments, the world felt safer, the lines between wild and human blurred by the silent language of trust. Dr. Winters grew thoughtful, pondering the bigger implications. If Oliver, a wild-born bobcat, could teach gentleness, patience, and consent through his actions, maybe he could help others learn as well. She floated the idea to the staff. What if we invited small groups to observe? Carefully, of course, always through the glass. The idea took root. Soon, the center arranged quiet, supervised sessions where children and seniors could visit, watch, and interact gently with Oliver. Each time he responded with the same calm, polite gestures, his pleas and thank you delivered with a tap and a trill. For Laia, these days were a gift. She watched as Oliver's gentleness melted the hearts of even the most skeptical visitors. She saw fear turn to wonder and distance dissolve into connection. And through it all, she felt something changing inside herself, a sense of belonging, a quiet courage she'd never known before. It was as if Oliver was showing them all a new way to be, one built not on dominance or fear, but on patience, trust, and the bravery to reach out, gently, across the unknown. The world outside the rescue center seemed to move at its own hurried pace, but within Pine Ridge, time slowed and softened, molded by the gentle presence of the Bobcat in the recovery room. Oliver's story had started to spread, not just among the volunteers, but to the wider community. Stories have a way of traveling, and Oliver's was more than just a tale of survival. It was becoming a lesson in connection. It was Dr. Winters who first suggested a more structured experiment. "He's so calm, so different from any wild cat I've ever treated," she said during a staff meeting, her brow furrowed with both concern and curiosity. "I want to see if this is just a bond with Laia, or something deeper. Could he really be comfortable meeting more people?" The staff was divided. Mateo worried. What if it's too much for him? What if someone gets too close and he lashes out? Mrs. Jensen, who now visited Oliver every morning before her shift, disagreed. "He's got more manners than half the humans I know," she chuckled, Kane tapping the tile. After long discussions, they decided to try a carefully controlled introduction. A local senior community group, the Pine Ridge Golden Years Club, agreed to visit as the first test audience. The center's educational room was prepared, chairs set up in a gentle semicircle, safety barriers placed so that Oliver would always be protected but visible. On the day of the visit, anticipation buzzed in the air. Laia arrived early to help prepare, anxiety and excitement twisting in her stomach. She wore her lucky t-shirt, a faded blue one with a paw print across the heart, and practiced her introduction in front of the mirror. "This is Oliver," she rehearsed. "He's not just a wild animal. He's a teacher." When the Golden Years Club arrived, some were skeptical. Mrs. Myers, the group's outspoken leader, looked unimpressed as she adjusted her glasses. "You want us to meet a bobcat? Alive?" Laia greeted everyone with a nervous smile and explained the rules. No sudden movements. Speak quietly, and never tap on the glass. The group nodded, curiosity piqued despite their doubts. Then Dr. Winters wheeled in Oliver's enclosure. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Oliver, calm as ever, sat regally in the middle of his space, his fur gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He blinked slowly at the crowd, tail flicking once, then padded toward the glass. Laia held her breath. Would he freeze? Retreat? Instead, Oliver paused before Mrs. Myers and, very deliberately, tapped the glass. Once. Twice. He gazed up at her, eyes steady and unafraid. The room exhaled in a collective gasp. Mrs. Myers laughed, her skepticism crumbling. "Well, would you look at that? He's saying hello." Dr. Winters watched with the intensity of a scientist and the awe of a child. "He's inviting you," she explained. "It's a gesture he uses with people he trusts." One by one, the visitors approached. Oliver greeted each in turn, never hissing, never hiding. He tapped the glass or gave a soft, almost bird-like chirp. For the braver guests, Laia offered a soft feather wand. "You can try to play," she said gently, "but only if he comes to you." Oliver responded with patience, sometimes even resting his chin near the barrier as an elderly hand traced his outline. The effect was magical. Fear gave way to delight, and soon laughter and whispered stories filled the room. "My grandson is so shy, but look at this cat," whispered Mrs. Abbott, her eyes shining as she watched Oliver gently pat at the feather. By the end of the hour, the Golden Years Club was full of energy. "I never thought I'd be so close to a wild animal," said Mr. Willis, who had kept his distance at first. "But he's not what I expected. He's gentle." That afternoon, as the guests departed, Dr. Winters and Leah shared a look of amazement and relief. "It's more than just tolerance," Dr. Winters said. "He seeks connection. He chooses it." They repeated the experiment with a group of school children the next week. The children arrived noisy and excited, but the moment they saw Oliver, the room hushed. Leah guided them through the same rules, and to their amazement, Oliver responded with the same calm patience. A little girl named Mia, who was terrified of animals, was the last to approach. Oliver watched her, blinking slowly. When she reached out a tentative hand, he gently tapped the glass and sat quietly, never pushing, never pressuring. By the end, Mia was grinning, her fear forgotten. "He's teaching them all something," Leah whispered to Dr. Winters as the kids filed out. Dr. Winters nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "He's showing us a new way to be with wildness, not by force, but by invitation." Word spread quickly. The center began to receive calls from local therapists, parents of children with sensory sensitivities, and even media outlets. "Can we meet the gentle Bobcat?" they asked. "Can he really be that different?" Each session was carefully supervised, always prioritizing Oliver's comfort. If he ever seemed stressed, the visits stopped. But time after time, Oliver rose to the occasion, greeting, inviting, teaching without words. The staff watched as barriers dissolved between old and young, fearful and curious, wild and tame. Oliver was becoming more than a survivor. He was becoming a bridge. Late one evening, after another successful visit, Leah sat by Oliver's enclosure, exhausted but exhilarated. "You're changing the world, one gentle tap at a time," she whispered. Oliver blinked back, and for a moment, the wild and the human world felt closer than ever before. The weeks after Oliver's public debut were full of surprises for everyone at Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center. Where once the center's halls rang with the sharp barks of fox kits and the nervous chittering of squirrels, now there was a quieter, more thoughtful energy, an undercurrent of anticipation. Each new visit to see Oliver wasn't just a chance to gawk at a wild animal, but to learn from him. Leah felt the shift most of all. She'd always believed that animals deserved more than just food and safety. Now, as she watched Oliver day after day, she saw what gentleness could do, how a single animal's patience could unlock a room full of guarded hearts. Dr. Winters noticed, too. "He's teaching us," she mused one morning as she watched Leah and Oliver in their silent, wordless routine. "Not just about bobcats, but about ourselves." Word spread fast, and soon the center started a series of gentle encounter sessions for both children and seniors. The staff developed careful guidelines. Speak softly, move slowly, and let Oliver set the pace. Even the most restless kids found themselves holding their breath, marveling at how a wild creature could invite connection with nothing more than a patient blink or a soft tap of his paw. The transformation was most striking during the therapy sessions for local children with autism and sensory sensitivities. At first, some parents worried. "He's a wild animal," they said. "What if he gets scared?" But under Leah's gentle guidance, the children approached the enclosure one at a time, guided by Oliver's signals. Sometimes, a child would freeze, anxiety written across their face. Leah would kneel down and quietly narrate what Oliver was doing. "See how he's not rushing you? He's just waiting." The children would watch. Then, after long moments of silence, one might reach out, hand trembling, to mirror Oliver's gentle paw on the glass. One little boy, Evan, had never spoken in public before. During his first visit, he stood rooted to the spot, his mother whispering encouragements. Oliver, sensing the child's fear, sat still and blinked slowly. Laya waited, heart pounding, not wanting to break the spell. After several minutes, Evan stepped forward. "Hi, Oliver," he whispered, his voice so soft Laya almost missed it. Oliver tapped the glass, once, then twice. Evan smiled. For the rest of the week, he talked about nothing but his new friend. Parents left in tears, some from relief, others from gratitude. "He's giving them confidence," one mother said. "He's teaching them that it's okay to be gentle, that it's okay to wait." The center began to document Oliver's unique approach. Dr. Winters, ever the scientist, took meticulous notes and started drafting a new set of behavioral guidelines for staff and visitors alike. She called it the Oliver Method. At its heart were simple principles: patience, consent, respect, and a willingness to let the animal lead. This new philosophy began to ripple outwards. Mateo, who once boomed his way through the halls, learned to walk softly and speak in a low, soothing tone. Even Mrs. Jensen, the crusty receptionist, found herself pausing before entering a room, remembering to knock gently, just in case. The change was contagious. One Saturday, the center held an open house to introduce the Oliver Method to the public. Families crowded the halls, local reporters scribbled notes, and a therapy group from a nearby retirement home arrived in a minibus. The main event was, of course, a quiet observation session with Oliver. The rules were explained at the door. Let Oliver come to you. Don't expect, just be present. Inside the room, the effect was palpable. Visitors, young and old, pressed hands to the glass, waiting, sometimes for several long minutes, for Oliver to approach. The room, instead of buzzing with chatter, was full of soft anticipation. When Oliver did finally tap the glass and settle in front of someone, you could feel the release of tension. Shoulders dropping, eyes brightening, barriers dissolving. At the end of the session, Laya stood before the crowd, her voice steady but full of feeling. Oliver has taught us that kindness can't be rushed, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to ask gently and to wait. He's shown us that patience is more powerful than force. A hush fell over the room as her words sank in. Several people lingered afterward, eager to talk. One elderly woman confided, "I was always so afraid of wild animals, but now I see how they can teach us to be better with each other." The staff began incorporating the new approach into every part of the center's operations. Interns were trained to move slowly, to watch for animal cues, and to always ask permission, never assuming that even the tamest creature wanted to be touched. The change led to fewer bites, fewer injuries, and, most of all, richer, more meaningful connections. For Laya, these days were transformative. She watched children grow braver, seniors grow softer, and even the most hardened staffers start to believe in the power of gentleness. Sometimes, late at night, she would sit with Oliver, telling him about the ripple effect he'd created. "You've started something, Oliver," she'd whisper. "You've made us all better." Dr. Winters, reflecting on the changes, realized the true lesson. Oliver didn't just heal because we were gentle with him. We healed because he taught us to be gentle with each other. And through it all, Oliver remained the quiet center of this new movement. His patience, his trust, his willingness to ask for affection rather than demand it, all of it was a reminder that healing, connection, and understanding always begin with respect. At Pine Ridge, the lesson was clear. The wild could teach the human world, if only it was willing to listen. For months, Oliver's gentle presence transformed Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center from a haven for the wounded into a place of healing for everyone who visited, animal and human alike. The word spread beyond the Minnesota woods, carried by newspaper articles and heartfelt testimonials. When a local television crew asked to feature Oliver for their Wild Wonders series, Dr. Winters hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. "He's already teaching so many," she told Laya and the staff. "Maybe it's time to let him show the world what he can do. Carefully, of course." So the decision was made. Oliver would become the center's official ambassador. His story, once just a secret shared between staff and a lucky few visitors, would now be shared with the entire community and, through the news, with thousands more. Preparations began for his first big public appearance, a wildlife education event at the local elementary school, to be followed by a live televised segment. The weeks leading up to the event were filled with both excitement and anxiety. Laya was chosen to accompany Oliver as his primary handler, given the deep bond between them. She practiced every scenario in her mind, imagining how Oliver might react to a crowd of children, to bright lights, to the sudden unfamiliar noises of a busy auditorium. Not everyone was thrilled about Oliver's growing fame. Mateo, protective of the animals, voiced his concerns. "He's still wild, Laya. What if he gets scared? What if the crowd's too much?" Dr. Winters, too, felt the weight of responsibility. "We need to be ready to call it off if he shows any distress," she warned. "His well-being comes first." The night before the school event, Laya hardly slept. She lay in bed replaying the last few months, recalling every gentle tap, every soft trill, every lesson Oliver had taught her about patience and trust. She promised herself that she would be just as gentle with him, no matter what the public expected. When the big day arrived, the school gym buzzed with anticipation. Banners reading "Welcome Oliver" hung from the bleachers, and rows of eager faces watched as Laya wheeled in Oliver's custom-built enclosure. Local reporters set up cameras, teachers ushered children into neat lines, and Dr. Winters hovered at the edge of the crowd, ready to intervene if necessary. Laya knelt by Oliver's side and whispered, "Just like we practiced, buddy. I'm right here." Oliver blinked slowly, pressed his paw to the glass, and let out a soft, calming trill. The principal stepped to the microphone. "We have a very special guest today. Please welcome Oliver, the Pine Ridge Ambassador." The room exploded in applause. Oliver remained poised, sitting tall but relaxed, scanning the crowd with calm, golden eyes. Laya introduced him, sharing his rescue story, describing how his gentle ways had changed the center and inspired everyone around him. As the presentation went on, Laya encouraged the children to approach in small groups. She demonstrated how to press a flat palm to the glass and wait for Oliver's invitation. The first group, wide-eyed and fidgety, shuffled forward. Oliver met them with a measured blink and a gentle tap, just as he had in the center. "That's his way of saying hello," Laya explained. "He always asks first." The children melted, awe replacing nerves. Even the teachers, who had doubted a wild bobcat could ever be safe around so many, found themselves drawn in by Oliver's quiet authority. But the real test came when a sudden sharp noise, a metal folding chair tipping over, crashed across the gym. The sound echoed, startling everyone. For a split second, the room held its breath. Oliver, eyes wide, tensed. The old wildness flared within him, instincts screaming to flee or fight. Laya's heart pounded. She crouched down, bringing her face level with Oliver's. "It's okay," she whispered, voice steady and calm. "You're safe. I'm here." Time seemed to freeze. Oliver's pupils dilated, his ears flicked back. The children drew back, anxious. But then, slowly, Oliver's breathing steadied. He looked at Laya, then at the crowd, and against all odds, pressed his paw to the glass, the same gentle gesture as always. The tension in the gym melted into applause, tears, and relief. Laya reached through the small opening at the top of the enclosure, letting Oliver sniff her fingers. He responded with a soft trill, the wild in him soothed by the trust he'd learned to give. The local news captured the moment live. "This is the lesson," Dr. Winters said to the camera, voice thick with emotion. "Bridging the gap between wild and human is risky, but it's worth it. We must respect their boundaries and recognize that real connection comes only through mutual trust." Back at the center, the staff replayed the broadcast, hearts in their throats. Matteo admitted, "He handled that better than some people would." Even Mrs. Jensen, never one to praise lightly, wiped away a tear. "He's not just an ambassador. He's a miracle." Not all the reactions were positive. Some viewers called the center, worried that Oliver was being tamed too much, that wild animals should remain wild. Dr. Winters addressed these concerns openly. "Oliver's comfort and safety are always our top priority," she explained to a local reporter. "We do this only because he chooses to engage. If he ever stops asking, we stop." The public debate made Laya nervous, but Oliver's calm presence gave her strength. Each evening, after the crowds and cameras had faded, she sat by his enclosure, sharing quiet stories, grateful for the gentle resilience he showed. The next challenge came a week later, during a live studio interview. The bright lights, unfamiliar scents, and constant movement overwhelmed even Dr. Winters, but Oliver remained steady, at least at first. Halfway through the segment, a burst of feedback from a speaker jolted everyone. For a heartbeat, Oliver crouched low, eyes flashing. Laya spoke his name softly. She pressed her hand to the glass, holding his gaze. "You're safe, Oliver. We're here." A long pause. Then slowly, Oliver rose and pressed his paw to the glass, the wildness subsiding, trust winning out. That night, as they drove home in silence, Laya realized that Oliver's true gift was not simply his gentleness, but his courage. The courage to meet the unknown, to trust despite fear, to bridge the wild and the human worlds for the sake of something greater. At Pine Ridge and far beyond, Oliver's story was only growing. The risk and reward of inviting wildness into the human heart had never been more clear. And in the eyes of a gentle ambassador, a new future was taking shape, one built on respect, patience, and the possibility of understanding. As the commotion from Oliver's public appearances faded, a quieter, more profound transformation began to take root at Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center. The center, once focused solely on rehabilitation and release, now buzzed with a different energy, a gentle hopefulness that seemed to infuse the air itself. Word of Oliver's story had traveled far beyond Minnesota's borders. Cards and drawings from children arrived in the mail. Local journalists, teachers, and therapists requested visits. Even volunteers from neighboring counties dropped by, curious to witness the so-called gentle ambassador. But for Laya, the changes felt deeply personal. She found herself lingering at the center long after her shifts ended, drawn not just to Oliver, but to the atmosphere he'd created. It was as if his quiet patience had healed not only his own wounds, but had woven a silent thread through everyone's lives, binding them together with newfound empathy and understanding. Late one evening, long after the last visitor had gone, Leia sat cross-legged outside Oliver's enclosure. The center was hushed, save for the soft buzz of crickets and the distant cooing of a rescued dove. Oliver lay sprawled on his favorite fleece blanket, eyes half closed, paws tucked beneath him like a contented house cat. His scars were nearly invisible beneath his thickening fur, and his limp had faded to a gentle swagger. Leia spoke softly, as she often did in these quiet moments. "Do you know what you've done, Oliver? You've changed so much. Me, Dr. Winters, all the people who visit. You've made us braver, kinder. You helped me find my own voice." Oliver blinked slowly, then lifted a paw to the glass in his signature greeting. Leia smiled, pressing her palm to meet his. She thought of the girl she'd been before, the one afraid to speak up in class, anxious about her family's future, uncertain where she belonged. Something in Oliver's steadfastness had seeped into her bones, replacing her old doubts with a quiet confidence. It wasn't just Leia who'd changed. The elderly visitors from the Golden Years Club now returned each week, eager for their sessions with Oliver. Mrs. Myers, who once kept her distance, now brought her sketchbook and spent hours drawing Oliver, marveling at his poise. She'd confided to Leia, "He's taught me not to rush, to wait and listen. Even my grandkids noticed I'm more patient now." There was Mrs. Jensen, too, who once walked the halls grumbling about wild animals, but now brought homemade treats for the staff and stopped to chat with nervous new volunteers, her heart softened by Oliver's presence. "If a wild bobcat can be gentle," she said one day, "then so can I." The effect rippled through the younger visitors as well. Children who struggled with anxiety or sensory sensitivities found comfort in the predictability of Oliver's rituals. They'd line up one by one, pressing their palms gently to the glass, waiting for Oliver's tap or trill before bursting into delighted giggles. Their parents watched in wonder, some with tears in their eyes. Leia remembered Evan, the little boy who had barely spoken a word before meeting Oliver. Now, each week, he greeted Oliver with a shy wave, and afterward, his mother reported, he was calmer and more expressive at home. "He even started reading to his baby sister," she shared with Leia, beaming. Even the staff noticed the difference. The once hurried, transactional nature of their work had softened. Now they moved slower, paused before entering enclosures, and took time to truly see each animal, not just as a patient to be healed, but as a being with a story and a spirit all its own. The Oliver method had become more than a guideline. It was a philosophy. For Dr. Winters, the transformation was profound. She'd started her career driven by logic and science, but Oliver challenged her to see the soul behind the eyes of every creature she treated. She reflected on this one quiet evening, confiding to Leia, "I used to think healing was only about broken bones and infections. Now I know it's about trust, too. Oliver taught me that." The most poignant change was within Leia herself. She felt lighter, more hopeful, like she too was healing from wounds invisible to the eye. She began helping with the center's outreach programs, speaking to classrooms and community groups about Oliver's story. Where once her voice might have trembled, now she spoke with steady conviction. "Oliver taught me to be gentle with myself," she said during one visit to a local school. "He showed me that it's okay to go slow, to ask for what you need, and to listen, really listen, to others." That same evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple over the pines, Leia and Dr. Winters found themselves sitting outside, watching the fireflies blink to life. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Leia asked softly. Dr. Winters nodded. "Oliver's journey isn't just about him anymore. He started something here. Maybe his legacy isn't just about being an ambassador for wild animals. Maybe it's about teaching us all how to heal together. Inside, Oliver stirred, stretching luxuriously before padding to the glass. He regarded the two women with a gaze that was wise and unhurried. Laya smiled, her heart full. In that moment, she realized that healing was not a one-way street. The gentle spirit of a wild bobcat had healed her as much as she had healed him. And through their story, the ripple of that healing was spreading outward, touching lives far beyond what either of them could have imagined. And as the stars winked into the sky, Laya felt a sense of peace, knowing that the best stories are those that never truly end. They echo on in every gentle act, every moment of patience, every brave gesture of trust between two souls, wild or human. The seasons drifted past Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center, carrying Oliver's story far beyond the Minnesota pines. With each passing month, the gentle bobcat became more than a local legend. He became a symbol of something quietly revolutionary, a new understanding of what trust could mean between the wild and the human worlds. As Oliver grew older, the time approached for him to step back from his role as the center's ambassador. The decision was made out of respect for his well-being. Dr. Winters, ever watchful, noticed he tired more easily, often seeking the comfort of solitude after each encounter. "He's given us so much," she told Laya, "but he's still a wild animal at heart. He deserves his own peace, his own space." Word spread through the community about Oliver's upcoming farewell at the annual wildlife benefit. The event was to be both a celebration and a tribute, an acknowledgement of the gentle bobcat who'd changed so many lives simply by daring to trust. The center overflowed with people who had, in some way, been touched by Oliver's story. The benefit was held in the center's open courtyard beneath a clear autumn sky, golden leaves swirling in the breeze. Strings of lights twinkled overhead, and tables were covered with wildflower bouquets and hand-drawn thank-you notes from local children. Laya, now a few years older, stood by the podium scanning the crowd. She recognized faces from every chapter of Oliver's journey: Mrs. Jensen and her cane, the Golden Years Club, young Evan with his mother, Dr. Winters smiling quietly at the back. In the center of it all was Oliver's enclosure, open on one side so he could observe the gathering at his own pace. He lounged on his favorite blanket, watching with his usual composure as guests approached one at a time to say goodbye. Some simply pressed a palm to the glass. Others whispered thanks or left small tokens, drawings, feathers, even a well-loved teddy bear. The ceremony began with stories. Mateo, once skeptical, recounted the first day he saw Oliver tap the glass. "I used to think wild was wild and tame was tame. But Oliver taught me there's something in between, a bridge if you're willing to walk across it." Mrs. Myers shared how Oliver had changed her view of patience. "He made me slow down, notice the world. Even with my grandkids, I started listening more. Turns out, it's never too late to learn from a wild animal." Evan's mother stepped forward, voice trembling. "My son found his courage because of Oliver. I found mine too." When it was Laya's turn, she stood with her notes shaking in her hands, her heart thudding as hundreds of eyes turned her way. For a moment her throat tightened, but then she looked at Oliver, his calm, golden eyes, the gentle tilt of his head, and she felt steadied, just as she always had. She began softly. "When I first met Oliver, I thought I was rescuing him. But the truth is, he rescued me too. He showed me that trust isn't given easily. It's earned, one gentle moment at a time. And once you have it, you have a gift that changes everything." She paused, scanning the faces. old and young, hopeful and grateful. The gift Oliver gave us was not just his gentleness, but his willingness to reach across what separates us. Fear, difference, even language. He trusted us first. That trust became the bridge that connected us all. Laia spoke of the moments she'd witnessed. Children learning to wait, seniors rediscovering joy, families finding hope in the smallest gestures. Oliver's story is about the walls we build and the courage it takes to lower them. It's about patience, consent, and the magic that happens when you let someone, human or animal, show you who they really are. The crowd listened in rapt silence as she concluded, "Trust and gentleness can transcend everything, age, species, fear, and even pain." Oliver's legacy is a reminder that the truest bonds are built not on force, but on respect and the courage to reach out, even if your hand might be refused. As the applause faded, Dr. Winters announced the next chapter. Oliver will spend his retirement in a protected reserve, where he'll have space and quiet, surrounded by the pines he loves. But his lesson stays with us. One by one, guests approached Oliver for the last time. Some wept, some smiled through tears, but all left changed, moved by the gift of trust from a wild heart. As twilight fell and the crowd drifted away, Laia lingered by Oliver's side, her fingers pressed to the glass. "Thank you, Oliver," she whispered, "for your trust, for your gentleness, for showing us how to be better." She watched as he rose and padded slowly to the edge of his enclosure, pausing to gaze at the sunset, a final, gentle salute to the world he'd changed. Later, as the center grew quiet and the last of the lights flickered out, Dr. Winters and Laia sat together, reflecting on what had passed. "You know," Dr. Winters said, "we'll probably never meet another animal quite like him." Laia nodded, eyes shining. "But maybe we don't have to. Maybe we just have to remember what he taught us and keep building those bridges one gentle moment at a time." That night, as the stars blinked overhead and a soft wind rustled the pines, the legacy of Oliver, ambassador, teacher, and gentle healer, settled over Pine Ridge like a blessing. Trust, once given, would ripple outward, changing lives again and again, as long as there were hearts willing to receive it. The sun was setting behind the pines, painting the sky with streaks of gold and lavender, as Laia found herself walking slowly through the quiet grounds of Pine Ridge Wildlife Rescue Center. The last of the benefits guests had gone, leaving only the hush of evening and the gentle wind whispering through the needles. A sense of completion lingered in the air, bittersweet and beautiful. As all true goodbyes are, she paused near Oliver's enclosure, where the Bobcat was resting in the final rays of daylight, his silhouette golden and regal. For the last time, Laia entered the room, moving with deliberate softness. Oliver raised his head, blinking at her, and for a moment, the world seemed to contract to just the two of them. A wild heart and a human soul, connected by threads woven from patience, trust, and gentle hope. Laia knelt beside him, reaching her hand through the open hatch. Oliver pressed his cheek into her palm, his eyes closing in contentment. The moment was silent but full, carrying the weight of every lesson they had learned together. She spoke quietly, her voice more certain than it had ever been. "To me, Oliver, your story isn't just about saving a wild animal. It's about learning the courage to ask for love gently and to give it with respect. You taught me, and so many others, that real connection is built on kindness, not force, on waiting, not rushing, on listening, not assuming." Memories flickered through her mind. Oliver's first painful night at the center, the slow miracle of his healing, the wonder he inspired in children and seniors alike. She remembered her own fears, her doubts, and the way those had melted away, little by little, every time Oliver reached out with a gentle tap or a soft trill. "It's strange," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes, "how you've changed the shape of my heart. I thought I was here to help you heal, but you healed me too. You showed me that gentleness is a kind of bravery, that sometimes the bravest thing is to be soft in a hard world." Oliver lifted his head, studying her with those deep golden eyes, ancient and knowing. Laia felt more than ever the truth of what they shared, that the wild and the gentle are not opposites, but companions, that even the fiercest heart can learn to trust, and even the most cautious soul can learn to reach out. As the last light faded, Laia spoke to the empty room, her words meant for Oliver but echoing to anyone who might one day hear their story. If you've ever learned something beautiful from an animal, wild or tame, hold on to it. Let it change you. Tell your story. Pass it on, because the world needs more kindness, more bridges, more gentle moments. She rose to leave, pausing for a final stroke along Oliver's back. "Thank you, Oliver," she murmured, "for reminding me that I belong here, that we all do, in our own wild and gentle ways." The next morning, the staff gathered quietly as Dr. Winters and Laia prepared Oliver for his move to the protected reserve. The mood was solemn but full of gratitude. Mateo, who'd never believed a bobcat could teach him anything, handed Laia a feather he'd found, a token of respect. Mrs. Jensen wiped her eyes and gave Oliver a stiff wave. Even the newest volunteers, who'd only known Oliver as a legend, lingered in the hallway, hoping for a glimpse. As the van rolled away, Laia stood watching until the taillights faded. The center felt changed, emptier in one way, but fuller in another. Oliver's presence lingered in the hush before dawn, in the careful way volunteers now entered each animal's space, in the laughter of children waiting their turn at the glass, in the thoughtful patience woven through every encounter. That night, Laia found herself unable to sleep. She sat at her desk, journaling by lamplight, reflecting on all that had passed. She realized that what Oliver had taught her wasn't just about animals. It was about how to be with people, how to move through the world with open eyes and a listening heart, how to build trust one small kindness at a time. She remembered the community's stories, the children's letters, the smiles of the elderly guests. She thought of how Oliver's lessons had rippled outward, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. And as she wrote, she crafted a message for anyone who might come across Oliver's story, whether in a book, a video, or just a passing conversation. If you're reading or listening to this now, know that your gentle acts matter. The world changes in small, invisible ways every time you choose kindness. If you have a story of healing, of connection, share it. Tell others. Because every story, every act, every moment of trust helps a little more kindness take root in the world. The next day, Laia returned to the center, ready to help a new group of volunteers, young, nervous, full of questions. She greeted them with warmth and patience, channeling the same calm she'd learned from Oliver. She watched as they met the animals, as they slowed their movements, as they remembered to ask before they reached out. That afternoon, as Laia walked the familiar trails around the property, she spotted a flash of movement in the tall grass. A deer, a rabbit, a flicker of wings. She paused, heart full, and offered a silent thanks to the wild. She knew that, somewhere in the protected reserve, Oliver was settling in, weaving new threads of trust in a world that still needed it. As the sun dipped behind the pines and the sky turned violet and gold, Laia whispered her final prayer. May we all remember the wild and the gentle within us. May we honor the trust we're given. And may we always be brave enough to reach out, softly, into the unknown. So ends the story of Oliver, the gentle ambassador, the teacher, the healer. But the lessons he left behind live on in every open hand, every patient heart, and every wild creature waiting for someone to listen. If Oliver's story touched your heart, pass it along, share your own, and never forget. Kindness, once given, grows wild and free, just like the best stories.